Is shipping Calle Jarnkrok back to Nashville really the answer to Toronto's cap problems? Or are the Leafs just rearranging deck chairs on Titanic while their real roster issues remain unaddressed? Listen, I'm going to be completely straight with you right now. We're witnessing the Maple Leafs do what they do best. Scrambling to solve self-inflicted salary cap problems by moving out depth pieces while hoping nobody notices the bigger issues at play. And this time, the name on everyone's lips is Calle Jarnkrok, the 33-year-old Swedish forward who might be heading back to where it all began, Nashville. But before we get caught up in the nostalgia of a reunion story, let's talk about what's really happening here and why Toronto finds itself in this position yet again. Here's the situation in black and white. The Toronto Maple Leafs have exactly $1.9 million in salary cap space. That's it. That's what they're working with as they try to finalize their roster for the 2025 to 2026 season. For context, that's barely enough to sign a league minimum player, let alone make any meaningful improvements to the roster. And that's where Jarnkrok comes into the picture. The Swedish veteran carries a cap hit of $2.1 million. Not an astronomical number by any stretch, but in Toronto's current situation, it's a number that matters. It's a number that's preventing them from making other moves, from adding depth, from addressing needs that might crop up during the season. And when you're a team with Stanley Cup aspirations, that kind of inflexibility can be the difference between making a deep playoff run and another first-round exit. But let's pump the brakes for a second and talk about who Calle Jarnkrok actually is, because this isn't just some throw-in player we're discussing. This is a guy who's been a solid NHL contributor for years, someone who can play both wing and center, who understands defensive responsibilities, and who's been a reliable bottom-six forward throughout his career. Or at least he used to be. Last season was rough for Jarnkrok. There's no sugarcoating it. Injuries derailed his year, limiting him to just 19 games in the regular season. When the playoffs rolled around, he managed to dress for 12 games but was virtually invisible, registering just one assist and posting a brutal -4 rating. Those aren't the numbers you want to see from anyone, let alone a guy you're paying over $2 million to. The harsh reality is that Jarnkrok has become what analysts call selling low. His value has cratered compared to where it was just a couple years ago. He's older now, coming off an injury-plagued season, with limited production to show for his most recent work. If Toronto had tried to move him 2 years ago, they might have gotten real assets back. Now, they'll be lucky to get a mid-round draft pick and some salary relief. But here's where the story gets interesting, and frankly, kind of beautiful in a hockey sense. The Nashville Predators, Jarnkrok's home for 8 seasons from 2013 to 2021, are lurking in the background, potentially ready to bring their guy back home. Think about what Nashville meant to Jarnkrok's career. He spent his formative NHL years there, developed into a reliable bottom-six forward, became a penalty kill specialist, and contributed to some genuinely good Predators teams. He knows the building, he knows the city, he knows the organization's culture. And more importantly, they know him. They know what he brings when he's healthy. They know his work ethic, and they know he can still contribute in the right role with the right expectations. For Nashville, this makes a ton of sense. They're a team looking to add depth up front, looking for experienced players who can eat minutes in defensive situations and contribute when needed. They're not expecting Jarnkrok to be a top-6 guy or a power play weapon. They want exactly what he's always been at his best, a reliable, versatile forward who can play up and down the lineup, kill penalties, and chip in the occasional goal. The Predators aren't the only team monitoring the situation, though. According to reports, the Minnesota Wild and Calgary Flames have also expressed interest in Jarnkrok. Both teams are looking to add depth and experience. And at $2.1 million, Jarnkrok represents an affordable option that doesn't break the bank or require significant assets to acquire. But Nashville has something the other teams don't, that emotional and professional connection. Hockey players are human beings, and the idea of returning to a place where you had success, where you know the organization, where you have relationships and memories, that matters. If Jarnkrok has any say in where he goes, and we'll get to that in a minute, Nashville would be the obvious choice. From Toronto's perspective, the return on a Jarnkrok trade isn't going to be substantial. We're talking about mid-round draft picks or mid-level prospects at best. This isn't about acquiring future stars or game-changing pieces. This is purely about salary cap relief. This is about creating flexibility so they can address other roster needs or simply have some breathing room if injuries strike. And that's where things get a bit complicated, because Jarnkrok holds some cards here that a lot of people might not realize. He has a 10-team no-trade clause in his contract. That means there are 10 teams he can veto trades to, which significantly limits Toronto's options. If Nashville isn't on his approved list, or if he decides he doesn't want to go there or anywhere else, this whole thing becomes much more difficult. But here's the thing. Most insiders believe that both Jarnkrok and the Maple Leafs would welcome a move that benefits both sides. Jarnkrok needs a fresh start somewhere he can get consistent ice time and try to rebuild his value. Toronto needs a cap relief. It's a situation where both parties have motivation to make something work. Let's game this out for a second. Say Nashville comes call with a 5th-round pick and agrees to take on Jarnkrok's full salary. Toronto says yes immediately. That clears $2.1 million off their books, giving them over $4 million in cap space to work with. That's enough to make a meaningful addition if the right player becomes available, or to simply have cushion for when injuries inevitably strike. For Jarnkrok, he goes to a place where he's comfortable, where expectations are manageable, and where he can potentially play a meaningful role on a team that's trying to stay competitive in the Western Conference. He's not going to Nashville to be their savior. He's going to be a depth piece, and that's perfectly fine at this stage of his career. The timing of all this is crucial too. Training camp is winding down, and teams need to finalize their rosters for the upcoming season. That means decisions need to be made quickly. If Toronto is going to move Jarnkrok, it needs to happen in the next few days, not weeks. The pressure is on Brad Treliving in the Toronto front office to make something happen. What's particularly interesting about this situation is how it reflects the broader challenges facing the Maple Leafs. They've backed themselves into a corner with long-term contracts to their core players, and now they're forced to nickel and dime around the edges, moving out depth pieces to create tiny pockets of cap space. It's not sustainable, and it's not a recipe for building a championship-caliber roster. But that's a conversation for another day. Right now, we're focused on Jarnkrok and what a potential departure means for both Toronto and Nashville. If this trade happens, and everything points to it being a matter when, not if, we're looking at a situation where everybody wins. Toronto gets the cap relief they desperately need. Jarnkrok gets a fresh start in a familiar environment. Nashville adds a veteran presence who knows their system and can contribute immediately. It's not the blockbuster trade that makes headlines, but it's the kind of practical, mutually beneficial move that helps teams function. The one wild card here is whether another team swoops in with a better offer or a more appealing destination for Jarnkrok. The Wild and Flames are still lurking, and if either of them offers Toronto a better return or presents Jarnkrok with a more enticing opportunity, things could shift quickly. But as of right now, all signs point to Nashville being the most logical destination. Here's what I'm watching for in the next few days. Any report of increased communication between Toronto and Nashville, any hints about what the return package might look like, and most importantly, any indication of Jarnkrok's preference. If he's on board with going back to Nashville, this deal could come together quickly. If there's hesitation, it might drag out or fall apart entirely. The bottom line is this. Calle Jarnkrok's days as a Toronto Maple Leaf appear to be numbered. Whether he ends up back in Nashville or somewhere else, the writing is on the wall. Toronto needs cap space. Jarnkrok needs a fresh start. And sometimes in hockey, the best solution is the simplest one. Finding a team where player and organization can both benefit. As we head into the final days before roster cuts, keep your eyes on this situation. It might not be the sexiest trade rumor out there, but it's one that could have real implications for how Toronto construct their roster and approaches the upcoming season. And if you're a Predators fan, get ready to potentially welcome back a familiar face. Who knows what it means to wear that gold jersey? So what's your take on this? Should Toronto move Jarnkrok, even if it means selling low? Or should they hold on to him and hope he can bounce back to form? And Nashville fans, would you welcome Jarnkrok back with open arms? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear what you think about this potential reunion. And if you're following along with all the latest Maple Leafs roster moves and trade rumors, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any updates. Things are about to get very interesting in Toronto, and we'll be here covering every development